Yeah, good morning, one and all, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Dr. Raghavendra. I teach sociology in the Department of Sociology, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. Uh, Today, as this course indicates that today we'll be studying about uh, uh, the rural and urban sociology course and what it teaches and how it teaches, and we'll be studying about that aspect in detail. So before that, in the present class, and we will be studying about what is the rural sociology and what is this urban sociology, and why we have to study this course as part of the sociology course. So rural sociology basically, as the title itself indicates, that it studies about the rural societies, the through sociological approach. So what does it mean? It means that as the sociology means, it is a study of the society in a general sense. It is more particularly, it is the study of the social interactions between an individual and the society and the social structure, right? And this sociology studies about the social interaction between the individual and the social structure. So, and how that social structure influences the individual, and how this individual influences the social structure. So, this duality of the social interaction, is studied by the sociology. So, taking a clue from this statement, so we are here to understand what actually indicates the rural sociology discipline. The rural sociology discipline basically indicates it is the study about studying the rural societies. And as you all know, friends, that you might have seen the rural, societies in comparison with, urban societies. So what we see in rural societies, basically the rural society is predominantly dominated by agriculture, is predominantly dominated by joint families, is predominantly dominated by the village patterns, and is predominantly dominated by the cultural patterns of the people and the and rural structure and so on. So these are the the basic features of this rural societies. So this rural sociology basically tries to understand the the patterns that exist in rural societies, and what are the changes that are taking place in rural societies, and how this the modern era, or rather the modernization, affecting the rural structure altogether. So this rural sociology that tries to understand the basic phenomenon of this social change that is taking place in rural societies. So, so friends, so in this class, so we will be studying about that. What are that? Basic characteristics of rural sociology, and how we can understand the concept of rural sociology in detail. So we'll be studying, right? Uh, the meaning of rural sociology indicates is that it is a study of social organization and social processes, and which are the characteristics of geographical localities, where people live in relatively small and density is low. So it means what? And generally, the in rural societies, when comparison with urban societies, in rural society, generally in the village, the density of population is low, is less compared to our urban societies, and it is also true that the lot of cultural patterns, and which are predominantly dominated by Indian social structure, one can see in the rural social structure. So this rural sociology discipline, it tries to understand that what exists in the rural sociology. Friends, I want to tell you something here, something very interesting, is that, so why we are studying this course? I mean, you may get this doubt that, why we have to study this course. We have to study this course primarily because this India is dominated by the numerous presence of villages, and India is also dominated by predominantly agriculture, and India is also dominated by predominantly by the rural, the social structure that has the that constitutes the features of caste system, that constitutes the features of joint family, that constitutes the features of cultural patterns, and so on. And so there is a lot of differences that exist between the urban society as well as the rural society. So rural sociologists they are basically concerned about what's happening in the villages, and what is happening in the villages due to the impact of globalization, due to the impact of modernity, due to the impact of the government policies, and so on. So this rural sociology is basically concerned about that such challenges that exist in the rural villages, right? So yeah, this the rural sociology as a discipline, as a sub discipline of sociology discourse, it actually began in India during the time of British itself. Britishers were so concerned that what exists in the grassroots. In other words, suppose if I'm the king, suppose if I'm a ruler, right? So if I want to implement any scheme, right? So I need to know what exists in the society, right? These rural sociologists were trained, were engaged, to do survey in the rural societies to understand what constitutes the social structure of those villages. And this rural sociologists, they went into the field, they collected the data, and they submitted to the governments saying that this is what existing in the society. Suppose if we design and include certain policies for the poor, it is beneficial. If it don't, if it includes certain policies, it is dangerous. All sort of these suggestions were given by the rural sociologists to the policymakers of India. So even at the time of independence, at the time of independence, even newly elected the Indian government was so keen to transform Indian villages, and for that purpose, this rural sociology discourse helped a lot for the Indian government as well. So these people went and they studied the rural societies, that what actually constitutes the rural societies and how those are differentiated from the urban settings in Indian context, right? So what are the challenges that are facing by the rural societies in Indian context? So what are the measures that are needed to strengthen those villages? So all these suggestions, all this, the recommendations were given by the rural sociologists. So in a way, this rural sociology basically helps the policymakers. It basically helps the academicians like us to understand what rural society is all about, isn't it? So there are a lot of sociologists and who have struggled a lot, for the development of rural sociology in India. For instance, A.R. Desai, M.N. Srinivas, Panini, and others played a crucial role in Indian context to strengthen the discourse of rural sociology, right? So this I mean, people like A.R. Desai and who say about the importance of rural sociology in Indian context is that, and according to the author, the author says that rural sociology or the science of the laws governing the specific Indian rural and social organization has still to be created. Such as science is, however, the basic premise for the renovation of the Indian rural society as inseparable or indispensable for the renovation of the Indian society as a whole. It means what? And the author tries to indicate here is that rural sociology is a field of sociology that is connected with the study of social life in rural areas, and it is centered on the rural community life, my dear friends. Thus, rural sociology has been specially designed to study the rural phenomenon, and it is a systematic study of the varied aspects of the rural society. It is the study of the rural social networks and how they operate for the smooth functioning of the society. The rural society is generally rooted in the villages. As I told you, that it is generally rooted in the villages, and rural sociology studies the aspects of those villages and the way it functions, the way it performs its functions, or the way it faces the problems and challenges, and so on. Right? So, the rural sociology offers viable solutions and ways of mitigating the problems that hound over the villages. So it basically studies about this, that both the social problems that exist in the rural society, and it also offers certain solutions for to strengthen those issues, to address those issues in the rural society. So in a way that this rural sociology, it tackles, to offer certain, the measures to strengthen the economy of Indian villages, to address certain social problems that exist in the rural villages. So, my dear friends, that so this is the main crux of sociology discourse as we are going to study in this class. So, there are different types of definitions were given by different scholars in Indian context for the discipline of rural sociology. And in fact, there are many Western and Indian sociologists have given their definitions regarding rural sociology in their own point of view, in their own perspectives, in their own understanding about how to deal or how to study the social structures of rural societies. And T.L. Smith, A.R. Desai, and Sanderson, and Champion, and a lot of other scholars, and who have given a variety of definitions that define the characteristics, nature, and scope of the rural sociology discipline. For instance, according to Sanderson, he says that rural sociology is the sociology of rural life in the rural environment. Bertrand says that rural sociology is that the study of human relationships in rural environment. For instance, that A.R. Desai defines rural sociology as the science of rural society. It is the science of laws of the development of rural society. Right? So there are different kinds of understanding that we can see in the given by this variety of scholars. And for instance, scholar called Chapin. So he says that the sociology of rural life is a study of rural population, rural social organization, and the rural social processes that operate in rural society. So there are a lot of the different sort of understanding were given by this sociologist to understand the nature and scope of rural sociology, in the rural context. So taking a clue from all these definitions, so what we are trying to understand here is that these definitions, no doubt, include the theoretical as well as the applied aspect of rural sociology. So the rural sociology clarifies the laws of the social life and points out the necessary conditions of its progress. So in other words, the rural sociology offers a platform to study the rural social structure in the village settings, my dear friends. Isn't it? Isn't it? So, so along with this, so what we are trying to understand now, we'll try to understand is that the nature of rural sociology. What is the meaning of nature? The nature is the basic characteristic, the loaded characteristics of, the rural sociology. What it actually offers, and how you know, or in other words, how we can study the rural sociology, this discipline. So that is the nature of rural sociology, my dear friends. Right? So there's a lot of now we'll try to understand the nature of rural sociology. What it means is that whether this rural sociology, now the basic question or the lot of debates that are happening in the rural sociology discipline is that, so what constitutes the nature of rural sociology? And in other words, how rural sociology studies the rural structure, right? So according to few scholars or according to few scientists, they say that this rural sociology is dominated by science framework. What does it mean? It means that how, in other words, they gave certain directions for rural sociology discipline, that how to study the rural societies. They say that the rural sociology is nothing but a science because it is governed by the principles and rules of the natural sciences. What does it mean? What does it mean? It means that the rural sociology follows the methods and procedures of the sciences. It means that if the rural sociologist, and whenever he goes to a field, that is a village, and he follows certain procedures that are followed in the science framework. It means that he goes to the field, he collects first he develops an hypothesis, he reads certain theoretical frameworks, and he develops certain hypotheses about the social problem, and he goes to the field and he collects the data, and while collecting the data, he maintains objectivity in his analysis, and he doesn't include his preloaded value based judgments, and he maintains neutrality in his analysis, and he tries to give an analysis that exists in the rural settings, but not according to his own bias and value-based judgments, and thereby he comes to a conclusion, and he gives a different analysis from the data that he gathers. So that is the scientific procedure generally follows in the natural sciences also, right? So whenever he goes to a field, so he basically follows through certain scientific procedures. It's basically because that so the analysis, whatever he gathers from the rural settings, that is followed on the lines of objectivity, which is followed in the natural sciences, which is followed in the natural sciences. So the nature of sociology is basically, as a science, can be examined, on the following grounds. And let us, understand what are those. Okay. First thing is that it follows scientific methodology. What it follows? It follows the scientific methodology. It means that what are the methods that are used in the sciences, and generally the rural sociology also uses those scientific methodology. The second characteristics of this procedure is that it facts accumulation, which means what? It means that the rural sociology is always founded on factual study. It studies rural social relationship and activities in a factual manner. It makes a scientific study of facts, general principles, and theories involved in them. It is also known as a principle that which science grows on the data collected from the field, right? Data collected from the field, and it generates analysis out of those collected data. So It means that, whatever the analysis that is made by the rural sociologists are based on the facts collected from the field. It is not the researchers' ideas. It is the ideas that are generated from the field. So those are called facts accumulation, because he accumulates facts from the ground. He accumulates facts from the field, isn't it? So, and the another characteristic is that empiricism. That empiricism. Unlike natural sciences that carry out experiments in the closed laboratory for measurement and verification, rural sociology uses the empirical method in the form of field work. For a rural sociologist, going to the field carries immense significance, as it helps, the researcher to gather relevant data on the basis of which the researcher formulate theories and provides an occasion for experimentation, observation, and verification. What does it mean? It means that so unlike natural sciences, my dear friends, you might have understood that for a sociologist, which is the laboratory, the society is the laboratory, right? So whereas the natural scientists like physicists or chemists, they have different laboratories in the form of closed four walls, right? Generally they conduct experiments they collect data and generally they conduct experiments with the chemicals, isn't it? And the molecules, to arrive at a certain precision in their labs and experiments. But whereas when it comes to a rural sociologist, it is the society is the lab for them. The society is the lab for sociologists. Why we are saying society? Because sociologists, they study about people, and where these people live, they live in society. So since they live in society, that society becomes a reference point for this sociologist to study. Therefore, that society is the lab for a testing ground. So for a rural sociologist, which is the lab? It is the rural society. It is the village, for instance, that is the lab for them to study the rural structures and patterns. They can't sit, in a closed four walls and study about rural society. If they want to study, they have to go to the field. They can't just sit in a four-walled room and try to generalize certain assumptions and theories from those sociological images. It's not possible, because if they want to study social problems that exist in rural society, they have to go to the field, because that is the lab for them. That is the lab for them. It is the society is the lab for sociologists. So they have to go to the field. They have to go to the field. They have to take interviews from the people. They have to understand what are the problems that exist in the ground level. They collect the data from the interviews, with the respondents, and they try to understand what are the problems that exist in the ground level. They collect the data and come back, and they analyze the data from the data gathered from the society, and they generate theories out of those collected data. In other words, this is the society. Since society is the lab for them, so for a rural sociologists, if they want to study about rural society, they have to go to the field. They have to go to the field. So that empiricism here, that empirical data they gather, unlike natural sciences, for a rural sociologist, the empirical data is generated by going into the field and collecting the data from the people, isn't it? So the empiricism is generated from the field data. That empiricism is generated from the field data. And what they do, the rural sociologists, following these science methods, they try to arrive at a precision and accuracy. What does it mean? It means that two of the important features of scientific investigation are precision and accuracy. The data that is collected and should reflect the existing or exact existing situation at the time of observation. The principles of rural sociology need to be proved true and verified. Their validity can be examined by one. But it means what? Since the rural sociology discourse follows the scientific methods, it opens for a discussion. It opens for debate. For example, if I say that that problem is existing in the rural society, suppose you can come up and question my data, saying that I may be wrong, I may be correct, subject to corrections based on the available data, right? So, and my data offers an open platform for questioning and the analyzing my data. So the scientific approach allows people to 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 rethink, to re-question, to re-verify my data. Suppose if you say that I am correct, after collecting the data from the reality, that that my approach is correct, then you follow my approach, or we both agree on this on certain points, after collecting the data. So generally, it means what? Those who follow certain scientific methods, generally, it actually gives a precision in their data. In other words, suppose if I follow certain scientific methods, I generate certain data and offer to you. If you want to retest my data, again, you also go to the field and retest the data. And since I am following the scientific approach, and you also get the same result, because I am following the scientific method, and you also follow the scientific method in trying to understand the rural society, and we both come with the same understanding. So why? Because we both followed the scientific methods. So since we get the same results, whether you do or I do, and that becomes a precision in our data and accuracy in producing the analysis. So this scientific approach, it gives the precision as well as accuracy in the data. Therefore, the rural sociology follows the scientific method in trying to get the precision and accuracy in their data, right? So, and while following this scientific approach, scientific method, the rural sociology tries to discover the what causes and what effects of a relationship. For example, if caste is a major problem in the rural society, so it tries to understand what causes and what effects with that caste problem. And it tries to understand the cause-effect relationship in that specific problem. In other words, if I want to understand the poverty that is existing in the rural villages, going through the following through the scientific methods, I can able to get the cause-effect relationship of the poverty problem in the rural villages, right? So, like sociology, rural sociology also discovers a cause-effect relationship between the rural phenomenon or social phenomenon. For example, in the modern society, the rate of divorce increases rapidly due to the family disorganization. Similarly, due to the swift growth of population, the rate of poverty and unemployment increases in the rural society. And in this example, dear friends, and we can find that the family or disorganization and population growth are two causes, and divorce as well as poverty and unemployment are their effects. You understand? So one problem is linked with the other. So one becomes the cause and another becomes the effect, right? So while following through the scientific approach, one can derive and detect the cause-effect relationship in a social problem. Right? And as I told you that in these examples, the family disorganization and population growth are the causes. And what happens? when the family disorganized, joint family system loosens itself, there the emergence of nuclear families. And with the emergence of nuclear families, there is a tendency of developing divorce rates in rural society. This is one sort of understanding by through following this scientific approach. Suppose you may also come up with another explanation saying that no, divorce rate is not linked with family alone. There are certain other factors as well, and you may come up with a different understanding, different approaches, and following the approaches of scientific methods. And you may disagree with me, right? So what I'm trying to indicate here is that this scientific approach allows for disagreements, for disagreements between the scholars. Suppose if you can come up with a different understanding, different analysis, and you can give different understanding of the cause and effect of the problem that exists in the ground level, right? So in other words, that this scientific approach not only allows to detect the cause and effect relationship of a social problem, it also offers disagreements and agreements between the scholars as well, right? So thus rural sociology finds the causal relationship in social disorganization and their incidents, activities, and relationships in rural society, and then forms the laws which govern and concern the rural society, isn't it? So, and another important characteristic of this, the scientific approach is that prediction. This is an important area again. This is another important area, right? So, what is that prediction? The prediction is that suppose if you follow this scientific approach, we can predict what's going to happen next. We can predict. But you may ask me a question that is it, and can we really predict? Yes, of course, to some extent we can predict the social behavior. We can predict the social behavior, not in a pure sense, because social behavior of the individuals is always dynamic, and in fact we cannot predict in 100%, but we can predict to some extent. To some extent, we can predict the social behavior, that what's going to happen in the next moment. Unemployment. So suppose if I say that I can predict like this, is that due to the population growth, and there is a possibility of increasing unemployment. And with the increasing of unemployment, what happens? Suppose youth becomes jobless. Then when youth becomes jobless, what happens? They tend to involve in certain crimes. So I can predict this way. I can argue with the governments that government, please provide employment to the youth, because suppose if you don't provide an employment, there is a chances of increasing crime rate in society. I can predict certain certain prediction based on the data I collect from the village settings, isn't it? So I may be true, I may be wrong, but the prediction is sometimes true to some extent. Not, as I keep telling, that not 100% prediction, but some prediction can happen with this analysis, isn't it? So this prediction, as we see that eventually, on the basis of the cause-effect relationship, the rural sociology becomes capable of anticipating the future and make predictions concerning the social relationships, concerning the social problems, etc., in the society, isn't it? So, so as I keep telling you that it can predict to some extent, but not 100% prediction. If it becomes, it's because sociology is not on astrology, is not an astrology. Sociology, since it concerns with the human population, this human population behavior keeps changing. In other words, that suppose if I go to the field today, I get one set of experience, response from the respondents. Suppose if I conduct the same study after 1 month, I may not get the same response from the respondents. It's because that social behavior of the individuals keeps changing. Since social behavior of the respondents in the society keeps changing, therefore the society is dynamic in nature. It is not static. It is not static in pure sense. It is keeps changing. It keeps changing. From day to minute or moment to moment, isn't it? So, therefore, the predictions about the phenomenon that are collected from the social reality, it may come true, may not come true. It is an open forum. It is an open the conclusions which are drawn from the scientific approaches are open to criticism, are open to challenge in its own discourse. Isn't it? Isn't it? So thus it is evident from this analysis is that rural sociology by nature is a science. There is no doubt about it. Okay, but it is a science in one sense, and it also offers an open discussion and open to criticism in another sense. So it possesses all the essential characteristics of science. And however, there are plenty of objections. I keep telling you is that there are plenty of objections against the scientific nature of rural sociology. Some sociologists have raised their views against the nature of rural sociology as a science, because few sociologists say that no, we cannot call it as a science, because science always gives one result. But whereas this rural sociology gives different results in different social context. I'll my dear friends, please understand what I'm indicating here. Science always gives same predictions. Science always gives same results every time and everywhere on this planet. For example, the one molecule of hydrogen and two molecules of oxygen, when we mix both of them, it becomes H2O, that is water. Suppose if you conduct this experiment in any lab on this planet, either you conduct in America, either you conduct that experiment in Australia, or either you conduct that experiment in India, or any other planet, place on this planet, you get the same result, because those chemicals, they react to the external environment with the same reaction everywhere, right? One molecule of hydrogen, two molecules of oxygen, when they mix, in a chemical reaction, gives the same result in any time, anywhere, n number of times you conduct that experiment, right? That is a science. That is a science, because you get the same result again and again. But in rural sociology, you may get the same result, you may not get the same result all the time. And in fact, suppose if you conduct a study in Vishakhapatnam, you get a one sort of a result. And if you conduct a rural study in Srikakulam, you get a different result. Why? It's because the individuals are not same. Each individual is different. The Srikakulam people are different. This village, this Vishakhapatnam is different. That Guntur is different, or Krishna district is different, or that for that matter, that Hyderabad people are different, isn't it? So each people are different in different rural settings. So whatever you draw the conclusions are not applicable to anywhere, everywhere, in all the places in the same manner. But whereas the scientific principles that are followed in the scientific laboratories are seen. As I gave you an example, one molecule of hydrogen and two molecules of oxygen gives the same chemical. When we do experiment in a chemical reaction, we get the same result anywhere, and everywhere. But whereas when we deal with the human behavior in the society, we cannot get the same result, because the society is so dynamic in nature, and the human behavior is so peculiar to understand. Therefore, sometimes our predictions may become true, and sometimes our predictions about human society may be proved wrong and may be proved to be a challenging test, isn't it? So this and there is a lot of debates that actually occur in the rural sociology discipline. Some people say that no, the rural sociology is a science, pure science, but whereas others say that no, it is not science, because in the science we get the same result, whereas since we are dealing with the human society, we cannot get the same result again and again, the way we conduct the experiment and the conduct the research study, because the society is dynamic in nature. The society is dynamic in nature, isn't it? So therefore, the few scholars have argued is that the nature of rural sociology is science in its characteristics and nature, but whereas other scholars have argued against the science approaches that are followed in the rural sociology discourse. They say that no, rural sociology cannot be called as a science, because the human society produces different results, in different social contexts altogether. Therefore, we cannot say that it is a science. It is a pure science, isn't it, my dear friends? So this is the nature of rural sociology, and I again repeat that the rural sociology, the nature of rural sociology, as we studied in this class, is that it is a scientific methodology, right? And it generally accumulates facts from the rural setting, and it also follows empiricism in while collecting the data, and it follows the objectivity, and it doesn't allow the space for the researcher's bias and his own value based judgments while analyzing the data. And it also tries to produce the precision and accuracy in the data, and it also tries to discover the cause effect relationship in their analysis, right? And it also allows for a space for predictions. This is according to the suppose if we say that the rural sociology, the nature of rural sociology is a science because of these factors, and is not a science because of other factors, as I told you, is that is not is a science because it doesn't allow space for predictions. This is another set of argument, my dear friends. So the nature of rural sociology is science based on the characteristics we discussed just now, and it is also not a science based on the characteristics we discussed in this class, is that it is difficult, since it is difficult to predict the social behavior of society. Therefore, we cannot call it as a science in its pure sense. In its pure sense, my dear friends. Okay, so this is the main what I'm indicating is that main understanding of nature of rural sociology, my dear friends, right? So uh, and if you have any questions that you can ask me, and so that we can have a discussion in the next class about the next topic. And if you have any questions, you can ask me in this, my dear friends. Zainab, and I can see Aarti, I can see Anjali. And do you have any questions in this class?
No, sir.
Can you be open? I am unable to hear you. Anjali, are you there?
No, sir.
Aarti,
Yes, sir.
Zainab,
Any doubt, sir?
Yes, sir. No doubt, sir.
sorry? No doubt. Zainab, just can you all switch on your video button? Just I want to see you once. Aarti, Anjali, are you there?
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir. I'm there.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay, fine, Anjali and Aarti. I think, is this your first class in sociology?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you have any knowledge about sociology discipline?
No, sir.
Fine, fine. We'll be dealing, you know, whatever the doubts you have, and we'll be discussing in the next class as well. I hope you enjoyed. Do you have any questions in this class?
No, sir. We understood. Sir, we didn't get still now books, test books, sir.
Okay, you can just contact the university administration. You have numbers available on the website, and you call them,
Okay, sir.
and they will
Okay, sir.
they are here to answer your queries. They will certainly help you out in finding out the
Okay,
books
sir.
and huh? Okay,
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Anjali and Aarti, and then you also circulate this news among your friends also, if you know, so that they will join
Okay, sir.
the class tomorrow also. Okay,
Okay,
ask them
sir.
not to
Thank
miss
you, sir.
these classes because these classes are very important for you. Don't miss
Yes,
any
sir.
class. Okay,
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
okay, huh? So see you all in the next class, and thank you for joining us today.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you.
sir.